All right, let's check it out. Okay, welcome into Rob Schmitt Tonight. I'm Bob Brooks. Rob, he has the night off, so I want to get right to it. Let's take a look at some of the documents that were made available to us after President Trump's speech last night on election interference. I want to start with this one that's popped up. The China plans were designed to exploit us, our U.S. societal fissures and vulnerabilities. So they wanted to hone in on racial tensions, alleging that white people hate black people, inciting demonstrations and marches as evidence of racial divides, increasing the level of conflict between police and anti-racism activists. In some cases, that ended up being deadly, feeding any sense that U.S. law enforcement resents USG, that's the United States government, and people of color. Kind of sounded like China really wanted to screw up our country, right? Or at least the prospects of President Trump winning in 2020. It's not good. It's actually horrible. I want to show you another document. It's this one that alleges China went as far as to produce fake U.S. driver's licenses to manufacture tens of thousands of Biden mail-in votes in 2020. So now we all know why and wondered why Democrats love mail-in ballots so much. So much to talk about after President Trump revealed to us that the election interference and lack of reporting it to him last night came up. I think the message really was a simple one from the president, that most of you suspected it. Our election system is vulnerable, and there's also a lack of trust in it big time. And I feel like that's something, though, kind of already knew. Now, China meddling in it, we'll call it maybe a surprise, maybe. And I only say that maybe because they are our biggest economic and military adversary, wanting a certain outcome for our country. Not really that big of a surprise. Of course, China has denied any wrongdoing today. The CCP, they put out this statement: the relevant allegations by the U.S. are entirely fabricated and aimed at vilifying China. We have no interest in interfering in U.S. elections and have never done so, according to that spokesperson. Do we believe that? No. I'd say the biggest shocker, no one in the deep states, as the president put it, said anything about it. But then again, I'll walk that back a little bit. Really a shocker? You know, when you put together the body of work to resist President Trump over the last decade plus, nothing really seems that shocking anymore. Really, the word I'll use, it is all absurd. The President of the United States felt compelled to air an address during primetime last night to inform our country we have major issues when it comes to our elections.
As the documents we are releasing show, CIA reporting explicitly stated, and I quote, in mid-2018, the Chinese Communist Party's policy was to leverage all domestic and foreign elements that were opposed to the U.S. president in an effort to reduce the U.S. president's votes and make him resign or prevent his re-election.
And that happened, but his own intelligence community didn't tell him, as they were collecting that intelligence in real time.
Documents show that during this period, dozens of significant CIA and NSA reports about China's election targeting were kept out of the presidential briefing. These were briefings I would get almost every day. Everything was kept out that was of importance. One email among intelligence analysts admitted that they had, quote, deliberately massaged the presidential daily briefing to withhold information regarding Chinese activities related to the election.
So now you can draw a bunch of conclusions as to why that happened, but at the core of it is the president is putting this country first in a big way. It's called America first. That's why China wanted him out. He said as much last night.
The Chinese government wanted U.S. president to lose the next election, and the reason they wanted me to lose is because they knew I was wise to them.
And for the left, the deep states, he's blowing up their dreams of an ultra-liberal country where they get to usher in communism. You're going to hear more on that in just a couple of minutes with our first guest, but that's how we're supposed to interpret all this, right? You know, you can easily make the argument communists, they've already taken over the Democrat Party. But, oh, wait, isn't China a communist country as well? Yes. Maybe that's why this all goes hand in hand. And I don't know, this isn't the first time, you know, this elected officials have made claims that there are issues with our elections and we need to fix them, right? President Trump once Well, actually, I'm not talking about him. Democrats have been making this argument for years. After they lose any big election, this is exactly what they say.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. He knows.
Without voter suppression, Stacey Abrams would be the governor of Georgia.
This is not a speech of concession, because concession means to acknowledge an action is right. I cannot concede that.
It's upon Donald Trump to remove this cloud of illegitimacy.
So what are we really talking about tonight here? It's the Save America Act. That's it. It's an 83% issue. Almost everyone in America wants voter ID and proof of citizenship to register to vote. Now, should we react to everything the president said last night? Yes, we are, and we're going to tonight. Should people be held accountable and fired if the law permits? Prosecuted? Yes. The president said that, and it was also reiterated today by DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin.
If you are an illegal or you're voting illegally, we will hunt you down, we will find you, and we will prosecute you.
And you know, the whole argument that illegals and non-citizens don't register to vote, well, that's also grossly false.
We've identified 250,000 non-citizens registered to vote in just 4 states. We also worked with proactive states to identify 28,000 non-citizens on their voter rolls, plus 400,000 individuals that are still registered to vote that are deceased.
But let's correct all this moving forward, so we don't have to have this big gargantuan reaction and say, oh my God, this happened. Let's do this. When you go vote, here's my ID. When you register to vote, you have proof. Yep, I'm an American citizen. I am able to register to vote. The whole country basically wants this regardless of party, but there lies the issue. One of the parties in our country, the Democrats, fear that if you need an ID to vote, that might cost them all future elections. Earlier this week, Democrat Senator Alyssa Slotkin said just that. If you haven't heard it yet, here we go.
The other thing that we blocked yesterday was the SAVE Act, right? Which was literally allow this administration to rig our democracy so that it would be hard for any Democrat in any state to win any election.
So look, my message to Congress tonight, do whatever you got to do. No one cares at this point. Reconciliation. Attach it to whatever bill. You owe it to Republicans, Democrats, independents. Really, the fact that this is an 83% issue or higher, this makes it a mandate. And then lastly, last night there was the media. I know you heard about this all day, but the major networks, they didn't air the president's speech last night. The president of the United States made an address to the nation in prime time. They didn't take it. I'm with the president on this one. There should be serious consequences.
Fraud like this should mean a revocation of their licenses. They use our public multi-billion-dollar in value airways for absolutely no money. They pay nothing.
And I could also go on another big rant about how dangerous that is, which it is, that they haven't learned anything, which they have not. I could say they are nothing more than one big mouthpiece for the Democrat Party and that they're completely out of touch with the majority of the American people. I could also say that most of the people working in those newsrooms are idiots. I know they are because I've worked in many of those newsrooms. They don't know what is going on at all. I'm not going to, because you all already know all of that to be true. What I will say tonight after that's done is they suck. I mean, they are absolutely awful. Okay, Sebastian Gorka, Deputy Assistant to President Trump and Senior Director for Counterterrorism, joins us now. Dr. Gorka, always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me, Bob.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about it. My first question would be this. From everything we heard from the president last night, how would you like the American public to digest and dissect that speech?
Probably is one of the most historic things the president has done outside of deciding to run for the presidency the first time and then winning the election again just a scant 2 years ago. So the fact is we have thanks to the great work of John Solomon, who was in the audience with me last night as we listened to the president. We have, thanks to the declassification done by the intelligence community, verified by DCI Radcliffe, by the acting director of national intelligence as well, we have all the evidence we need that has demonstrated malign actors, including the People's Republic of China and others, have open access to our elections, to the systems we use to run those elections, and have stolen more than 200 American voters' personal information. So we can't go on with that. The president made a very simple statement, I think during the speech, but definitely to us afterwards, the cabinet members who were there, the other members of his team, and he said, if you don't have secure elections, you don't have a country. That was the importance of what the president did last night.
What is China's ultimate goal? Let's hash that out. Let's talk about that. Why would they do something like this? And one of the remarks President Trump made last night was they found out the president of the United States was wise to them, contrary than many others here. Can you talk about that?
It's not complicated, Bob, and I'm so glad the president used the word communism so many times in his epic July 4th speech here on the Mall. Why is this important? Why does it matter? Because China is the world's largest communist dictatorship. Yes, the Berlin Wall may have fallen November the 9th, 1989, but whether it's China, whether it's Cuba, whether it's North Korea, or whether it's the Democratic Socialists of America, just read the platform they published yesterday, communism is alive and well in the world. And if you're a communist, whether you're Beijing or whether you're a quote-unquote DSA politician here in America, your goal is to undermine the constitutional order of the greatest republic in the world. You cannot beat us militarily. Nobody can beat America. Look at what we can do with our incredible armed forces. As such, you must use irregular warfare. You must use subversion. And undermining our elections is one of the most effective and dangerous ways to subvert the freedom of all Americans. The president said it last night. This cannot be a partisan political issue. Doesn't matter what your identity is. If you believe in America, we've got to have secure elections.
Yeah, it should unify us all, the president has said, which I'm with you on this. I can't believe it's not. Everyone would say, oh, my gosh, the president of the United States is telling us this is happening. We got to get to the bottom of it. We got to fix it. Everyone should be on board. We also know that the president, he's declassified a trove of documents related to his speech. One of the emails is showing that election intel on China was suppressed from him, Dr. Gorka. The email from a strategic intelligence analyst reading this: we deliberately messaged the pending presidential daily brief to avoid any direct links to the election. Here was the president on that topic.
Today, I'm asking the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the CIA to investigate how and why such crucial information was hidden, to fire those involved in the cover-up, and to file criminal charges, if appropriate, against these people.
How wasn't he told? How was the president of the United States not told about this?
Well, how was he actually subverted by the then director of the CIA? How do we have the communications from within the FBI, from a woman who is meant to be working on counterintelligence? You can read this on my Twitter feed, @SebGorka, saying we have a shadow government. We're going to make sure this information on China's subversion of the elections never gets to the president. We're going to scrub. We're going to rewrite the presidential daily briefing. Why? Because they understand that this man will get to the bottom of the deep state. You know, 9 years ago, when I was in the first administration, at the beginning, I thought it's kind of maybe a little bit weird to use the phrase deep state or permanent bureaucracy, but when you see the likes of John Brennan calling the president treasonous, when you see the internal text messages from Lisa Page, Stroke at the FBI, this woman, Lisa Monaco's communications, when you see them talk about how we have to have a plan B, we have to have a shadow government, then you realize that the deep state isn't a theory. These were the people whose informal power was threatened by the actual legitimate mandate and the power of a man who got 70 and then 79 million votes from the American people. So I've seen these individuals with my own eyes. They think they get to run the country, not the person elected to be the chief executive. That's why President Trump had to be undermined, and that's why we're going to tell the truth.
Hence the term deep state. It's very fitting. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, always a pleasure. Sir, thanks for coming on.
God bless. Thank you, Bob.
All right, let's continue the conversation. Gordon Chang, author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon, your presence tonight, I think very fitting. Let's talk about it again. As I showed the audience, China has now denied the claims made by the president. They went on to say this: the relevant allegations by the U.S. are entirely fabricated and aimed at vilifying China. We have no interest in interfering in U.S. elections and have never done so. We know this is not the first time something like this has happened. China accused of very similar acts over in the U.K., compromising voter records just last year. This was cyber attacks here. Talk about it.
Oh, well, we certainly have seen China in our elections. You know, President Trump went back to the 2018 midterms. It was obvious then. In 2020, there was a full court press on China. Not only were they in our election infrastructure, they were also funneling money illegally to the Joe Biden campaign. And we also know that they were using their social media bots and their text messaging platforms and TikTok to undermine the president. Also, Bob, they were fomenting violence on American streets. Now, if an American foments violence to overthrow the government, that's a federal crime. But when a foreign government does it, that is an act of war. And China did that. And it did it openly, by the way. We have Twitter messages from Chinese officials urging Americans to commit acts of violence.
Yeah, and I said in that opening monologue, in some cases, it has turned deadly. They really did a number on the United States people here, because it gets violent very often during these political protests, or whatever the heck you really want to call them here. I also want to point this out again, that the DHS Secretary, Markwayne Mullin, he also gave a speech today. He detailed that they've been able to find U.S. voter rolls so far, 250,000 non-citizens registered to vote in just 4 states, plus 400,000 individuals that are still registered to vote that are deceased. So we know that President Trump said that China got some of this data. What do they do with that? What do you think their plan is?
There's a couple things. First of all, they just generally feed it into their AI systems because they want to build a picture of the United States. And China has probably a better database on America than the federal government does in many respects. Also, what they do is they look for people that they can compromise. This was especially true with the hack of the Office of Personnel Management of the federal government, as well as the insurance providers like Anthem. They were looking for people who were vulnerable, who they could blackmail, who they could turn. And so every bit of information is useful for that purpose, including what they can get out of our election infrastructure.
Gordon Chang, got to leave it there. Glad you stopped by tonight.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Okay, coming up, ICE is going to start pulling over illegals again, but there are new protocols ICE agents are going to have to follow. So really, my question is, are illegals getting special treatment that American citizens aren't when we're pulled over? To me, it kind of seems that way, and I don't like it at all. So we're going to talk about what is changing next.
You're dangerous.
A very interesting place to be right now. It's been 35 days, as you can see on the counter here behind me, since Nicolas Maduro, the leader of this country, was taken by Delta forces.
Because you're honest.
You don't get political. I don't think actors should. You know,
thank you. So break the glass.
And I guess this didn't sit too well with one of the Schmitt heads on Newsmax.
What the FCC is supposed to regulate, ABC breaks that law every single night. That is not a comedy show. That is propaganda.
Watch Rob Schmitt weeknights.
Almost half of women runners say safety is their biggest concern. Majority of us have to constantly change routes, start times.
Instead of thinking of my pace, we worry about being followed, unwanted attention, and stuff that is simply scary.
Imagine this banana was a less lethal device, capable of incapacitating an attacker, letting you get to safety. At Byrna, we don't sell bananas. Go to Byrna.com to find how you can always safely make it to the finish line.
Hello, this is Franklin Graham. Samaritan's Purse is responding to the deadly earthquakes that struck Venezuela. On the 24th of June, 2 back-to-back earthquakes. Hundreds and thousands of people have been injured. Thousands of people are missing. The people are hurting. Samaritan's Purse has taken a field hospital. We've got doctors and nurses, and we're responding right now to the people that have lost so much. We've taken water purification. We've taken solar lights, a lot of things. We need your prayers and we need your help. God bless you.
This is a bottlenose dolphin, and this is the breakthrough nutrient doctors discovered that helped dolphins age healthier. Now, over 100 peer-reviewed studies later, it can help you age healthier too. Discover how at fatty15.com.
My dad has never been in better shape. He had a stroke and passed away. He had a life insurance policy. Ethos.com. In 10 minutes, you can be covered with life insurance.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
The president and I are very close. I was texting with him this morning. He and I are there's no daylight between us and the enforcement. And in fact, we have ramped up our enforcement and our arresting illegals.
Time for one of the ongoing sagas that unfolded this week. DHS Secretary Markwayne Mullin addressing reports that he was blindsided by the policy to pause ICE vehicle stops nationwide after multiple ICE-involved shootings. The Wall Street Journal claiming this, President Trump was completely caught off guard, writing no one had briefed the president on the decision. Now, President Trump overruling Mullin. ICE officers can now resume traffic stops, but only if at least one agent is wearing a body camera. The new directive means officers without it aren't authorized to conduct those traffic stops. Now, body cams, they've only been deployed to about 50% of ICE field offices after the rollout began in larger cities. The policy is expected to limit ICE traffic stops until the rollout is totally complete, which will take roughly 2 more months. Again, is this the same treatment American citizens get? If not, I personally don't understand it. Charles Marino, he's the national security analyst and former DHS senior advisor, joining us now. Charles, I know along with body cam, there has to be an officer there who's been given some kind of special instructions on how to deal with that situation here. So your thoughts on implementing this new policy here?
Yeah, I think the body cam policy makes sense. The majority of law enforcement around the country at the federal, state, and local levels all use it. It does as much to protect the agents and officers as it does the citizens. But I will tell you, the only special treatment that those in the country illegally should be getting is an expedited trip back to where they originated from. That's it. As far as going above and beyond and catering in the way the law is being enforced, that should not be happening. Car stops should not be paused. They should keep going. Now, what's happening is there's having to give special attention to the way they're doing this because they're not doing so in coordination and cooperation with state and local law enforcement in sanctuary cities who are staying away from ICE and forcing them to go at it on their own. And that creates a more dangerous situation for these ICE agents.
Also, I want to get to this real quick. You're talking about the numbers, right, on the pace and how they're able to do that. Markwayne Mullin also talked about that today. Let's bring it up.
442,637 total deported last year in 25. To date, well, these are yesterday's numbers. We have 403,294 that we've done in 2026. Total removals is 3 million.
Your thoughts on those numbers? Seems like things at least this year have picked up.
Yeah, they're picking up, but we know the mountain that they're trying to climb here, thanks to the Biden administration, with anywhere from 15 to 20 million that have entered the country. And we don't even have reliable numbers on that. We know the threats that were allowed into the United States from around the globe without vetting. We know the number of children missing, unaccompanied minors, where DNA testing was stood down by the Biden administration, where the Secretary of Health and Human Services and Secretary of Homeland Security previously stood down all of these policies meant to protect these children, with now over 450,000 missing in the United States. So this is a tough milestone for this administration to achieve, which is why everything needs to go full speed ahead.
Also, the DHS, they put out their worst of the worst every week, maybe a couple times. A lot of these guys, murderers, drug abusers, and pedophiles, violent pedophiles, happens every day, their arrests. Charles Marino, got to leave it there. Appreciate it.
All right, Bob. Thanks.
All right, as Trump reportedly leans towards an expanded military operation in Iran, U.S. forces, they blow up a surveillance tower, bridges on a key Iranian port off the Strait of Hormuz. So now, civilian infrastructure in Iran, that is the target. We're going to dive into what that means for escalation coming up next.
The future is going to be amazing.
He's the visionary who gave us SpaceX, Starlink, Tesla, PayPal. Elon Musk is championing free speech with X. And his alliance with Trump is giving freedom a big boon. Watch Vision, Elon Musk's story.
For years, I was hiding my drinking. I'm the type of drinker that I don't just have one. I didn't want to feel that urge anymore. That's what brought me to Or Health. I'm a better dad. I'm a better husband. I just have a more grounded and present life, thanks to Or Health.
Text Newsmax to 710-710 to learn more.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
This is a paid advertisement for legal services. If you or a loved one has mesothelioma or any other asbestos-related cancer, call now. Asbestos manufacturers sold deadly asbestos materials to thousands of companies, putting workers at risk. An estimated $30 billion in court-ordered trusts have been set aside to pay out claims to asbestos victims. You may be entitled to a portion of these funds and receive compensation without filing a lawsuit or ever going to court. For your free legal consultation, call 1-800-306-1979. That's 1-800-306-1979.
48% of Americans aren't getting enough magnesium, which is essential for nerve, bone, and muscle health. I recommend Cunol High Absorption Magnesium Glycinate. It's gentle on the stomach and helps you get the full benefits of magnesium. Cunol, the brand I trust.
How easy is it to order lottery tickets with Jackpocket? Step 1, grab your phone. Step 2, download Jackpocket and order tickets for your favorite state lottery games. Step 3, let the good times roll.
New Jackpocket customers get $10 instantly in lottery credits when you deposit just $5.
The first day back from maternity leave is so weird. We get it. Find a caregiver who does too. When it's not you, it's care.com.
It's the end of a long day, but your mind's still racing. Meet Super Calm from Nello. PhD formulated with ashwagandha, L-theanine, magnesium glycinate, and vitamin D3 to help support relaxation and healthy cortisol levels. Super Calm from Nello.
Okay, welcome back in. U.S. forces have been pounding Iran all week long, and the Wall Street Journal is now reporting that Trump is leaning towards expanding U.S. military operations in Iran. CENTCOM says that they have destroyed a key Iranian surveillance tower, which was being used by the IRGC to track and target commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. military is attempting to isolate Iran by blowing up multiple roads and bridges around the country's largest port on the Strait of Hormuz. While our naval blockade remains in full effect, the Marines redirect Iranian-linked vessels, boarding one to ensure full compliance. Iran responded earlier by striking a desalination plant in Kuwait responsible for clean drinking water. 90% of Kuwait's drinking water comes from these type of facilities. Dr. Michael Savage joins us now. Doc, always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Not a good time. Not a good time at all. I have a question and a comment, if you wish, related to this, or I'll take your question either way.
Kick it off. Let's see. What do you got?
Okay. So I watched President Trump's speech last night, And I tweeted right afterwards, I said, Trump's speech, did it win new hearts and minds? That's very important. The word new is the most important part of that sentence. Because those of us who know have always known there's a deep state, always known there's a communist undertow in the country. And the average American didn't even get to see the speech last night, number one. The major networks did not carry the speech. So did it win new hearts and minds? In other words, it's one thing to tell the base what they already know, to motivate them to vote. But it's another thing to see if you can win people over from the middle. Forget the other side, they're hopeless. I don't know. I'm not so sure it did, watching the speech, because although it seemed to have revelation in it here and there, until people see heads rolling and people being perp walked in handcuffs, they don't believe a word of it. That's what I'm seeing.
And I had that discussion with the producers earlier today about that. The fact that, we're saying there's going to be accountability. Well, until we actually see what you just described, people are they're on the fence when they say accountability. I will say this, the president has proved he is not going to stop with the ultimate goal here, obviously having fair and secure elections, but pressing the issue on the Save America Act here. He has not given up, and I think a lot of Americans appreciate that because we've seen other politicians time and time again say, oh, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. The president has not wavered when it comes to that, rather. I think he's only amped up the pressure on it. Let's also talk about this, though, the costs of the war in Iran, the war in Ukraine. You say it's driving up costs so high that it's starting to have an impact here at home, and that's what's bringing in socialist candidates, and they're capitalizing on that. Let's talk about that.
Right. I asked the question, will the endless war in Iran, the war in Ukraine, and the price of goods catapult the far left into office in America? CNBC, I would say center left, has a new poll which says more voters would be more likely to support a Democratic Socialist candidate, that's a communist, than a Make America Great Again supporter or a candidate endorsed by President Trump, according to the CNBC All-America Economic Survey. Take it for what it isn't. The fact of the matter is, Democratic socialism or communism, whatever you want to call it, is on the move in America, and there's a reason for it. And the reason is, whether or not it's real, people perceive that there's an inequality in the economic system. They don't want to hear that a guy like me, the son of an immigrant, worked since he's 5 years old and has done very well in life because he's never stopped working 7 days a week. I didn't inherit any money. They don't care. They assume anyone with a house is rich and stole it. They assume every billionaire who made $1 billion is a thief. That's because of the learning curve that they have never entered. There's no learning curve. There's a story.
Or what they have been taught.
Well, I don't know that they've been taught. They've been taught the opposite, which is that the man with 2 cows stole the other cow from the man with 1 cow. Not that he saved enough money to buy a second cow. This is the problem with Bernie Sanders and the lie that he's been telling about millionaires and billionaires. He lied to millions of people. He's created 1 million clones of his communistic philosophy. And that's the problem. He's no longer alone. He's unleashed an army of lunatics upon America.
Isn't it the movement of jealousy big time and envy?
Of course it's envy. It's always class envy. Bob, I knew a guy in the Special Forces, since passed away, lovely man, went to one of their dinners, and he said to me quietly one rainy night, he said, Michael, I'm Greek origin. Let me tell you a story. He said, my uncle is what drove him into the Special Forces. My uncle lived in Greece. Communist revolution occurred not that long ago, by the way, and my uncle had 2 cows. And he said his neighbors who only had 1 cow beat him to death with farm implements, claiming he was a exploiter. And a capitalist. This is what will happen in this country unless things are turned around rapidly.
Dr. Savage, got to leave it there. Totally agree. Good to see you.
Have 2 cows.
3 or 4.
Congress must pass the Save America Act. How easy is that to do unless you want to cheat? The only reason you wouldn't do it is you want to cheat because your policies are so bad and your candidates are so pathetic that you can't get away or can't get elected any other way. This landmark bill requires that all voters must show photo, voter ID. How simple is that?
President Trump once again urging Congress to pass the Save America Act during his shocking address to the nation last night on election security, putting China on notice and pledging to protect our elections from future foreign interference could be the spark of the GOP that they need to maintain the majority in the midterms. Dick Morris is an advisor to President Trump. He says last night's bombshell speech will indeed, I should say, push the Republican Party to victory in November. Dick, always a pleasure. Why do you think that way?
Well, actually, I'm fearful because Trump clearly has a majority for the midterm elections. The media doesn't say that, but if you do any analysis of the situation, he comes to the conclusion that he's definitely going to win the midterms. The Democrats need to pick up 4 seats in the Senate, and they can't. They might even lose 2. In the House, you have 15 seats that used to be swing seats that now are likely Republican because of reapportionments and minority voting not being allowed to gerrymander. But the speech last night recasts the midterms and makes it about election fraud. And I'm worried about that because while most people are probably willing to agree that China is attempting to hack our elections and that our elections are terribly insecure, I don't think most people are prepared to believe that the Democrats encouraged this or covered this up during the Biden years and that they're largely responsible for this. I'm worried that by using this and the press spinning it as a partisan issue, it could get in the way of Trump's winning the midterms.
So
I think
you're a little bit
Trump
fearful that it could
make this as nonpartisan as he could.
Yeah.
But still, the facts of the matter are that the Biden administration covered this up. The deep state deliberately permitted this to happen, and that inevitably will make it a partisan issue. And Trump's record is so positive that he was going to win the midterms, and now I'm a little worried about it.
Well, let's hope. Let's hope people are smart enough, and I generally believe they are, to decipher what was said last night and not jump to those kind of conclusions there. Dick Morris, you have a great weekend. We got to run, Dick.
Thank you.
Okay, the president of the largest teachers union in America, Randi Weingarten, using her keynote address at their annual convention to bash the president, surprised I'm not, and to urge her members to vote Democrat. So what happened to about children in teaching them, not politics? Okay, details on her coming up.
Kibble. It's been the standard for decades, and it's failing our dogs. That's why we created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete. It's gently air-dried, locking in the nutrients and the flavor dogs go wild for. Visit your local pet food retailer today.
Hey, I'm Dr. Drupinski. I've been a physician for 4 decades. I've been looking at the aging process for a long time, and Fatty 15 is one product that actually slows it down. Fatty 15 comes out of Navy dolphin research. A brilliant veterinarian realized that dolphins get disease much like humans. She looked at what predisposed to those problems, isolated the molecule, gave it to the animals, they didn't get the problem. Without the C15, our cells become fragile and age and oxidize. This pushes that back. Cell health equals physical health. That's why I take Fatty 15.
Now, tirzepatide for weight management is available in a dissolvable tablet. It's not the injection and doesn't offer the same strength or clinical evidence as the injectable form, and results will differ from the injection. But for patients who don't want shots, this tablet option is worth exploring, understanding results will differ from the injection. Tirzepatide tablets are a prescription that starts with a telehealth evaluation by a licensed physician who reviews your health history. And if it's right for you, they prescribe it. This might be worth a conversation.
With Jackpocket, you can order official state lottery tickets anytime, anywhere. And you can see your ticket on the app. Plus, with new official state scratch-offs available on the app, more of your favorite games are right at your fingertips.
New Jackpocket customers get $10 instantly in lottery credits when you deposit just $5.
As a working mom, I'm always on the move. The zip-up shoulder support bra from Tommy Copper is the perfect bra for my busy life. I have to do it all, and I can wear it for anything. I love the support for my back and shoulders. From morning to night, why would I wear any other bra? Thank you, Tommy Copper.
My days are long, packed with activities. I need a bra that's comfortable and supportive. Thanks, Tommy Copper.
I feel so confident with great posture. No matter what I'm doing, why would I wear any other bra? Thank you, Tommy Copper.
Go to TommyCopper.com and upgrade your bra today.
Xeno Organic Super Greens can help fill nutrition gaps and support gut health. With 5 grams of fiber, pre- and probiotics, 70 organic superfoods, and 0 sugar. Xena, the #1 organic super greens.
People always ask me how I stay ready, how I stay consistent, how I lock in when it actually counts, again and again. It's the work you do before anyone's watching. They think I must be on something. Maybe. It's pure, it's potent. It's all me. Something that never lets me down. Armra. I'm on it.
This is the story of the one who knows that being ready for the unexpected comes from having a partner like Grainger, whose professional-grade products and next-day delivery help ensure that he and his team are prepared to rise to every challenge, so he can be confident that he has what he needs when he needs it to help keep patients safe and happy. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This time, the country elected Donald Trump. Remember that warning about the barbarians at the gate? Well, the barbarians aren't at the gate. They are inside, including at the highest levels of government. The president and his cronies are abusing government powers to punish political opponents.
That person represents teachers. The far-left leader of one of the largest teachers' union in the country, Randi Weingarten, turning her keynote address at the American Federation of Teachers biennial convention in D.C. into a political weapon against President Trump. The event taking place throughout the weekend. Weingarten has decimated education for our children. She fights for charter schools, fights them, I should say. She fights to keep public education failing. In more than 900 New York City schools, nearly half of all public schools in that city have had fewer than half of their students passing math, reading, or both on state exams last year. And just a few months ago, a study showed that American students are in a generation-long test score decline. The drop cuts, they come across income, race, and geography. This is largely because the teachers' unions want their agenda, which is obviously all left-wing and for the Democrats. You just heard it. Corey DeAngelis joins us now, senior fellow for the Heritage Foundation. Corey, good to see you.
Hey, Bob. Good to see you.
Randi Weingarten. Okay, our kids, they can't read, can't do math anymore. Test scores declining, and she's worried about Donald Trump.
Yeah, I listened to that whole speech. It just sounded like Trump derangement syndrome. I read through their 200 pages of resolutions that they're voting on this week at their annual convention. Not a single one had anything to do with improving student outcomes. No wonder 20% of kids are proficient in math in America, despite us spending $21,000 per student per year. Randi Weingarten makes over $500,000 a year, and all she does is wage war on Trump. If you looked at some of the resolutions, they call in one of them to cut our military budget by 50%. It's like staying in your lane. You've already ruined the schools. Yeah, you want to ruin national defense in addition to ruining the schools? Trust me. I mean, they call to abolish ICE. They call to force us to pay for education for illegal immigrants. There's a whole ton of resolutions. One of them calls to remove Trump from office before November 2026. It sounds like an insurrection to me.
What could union members do if they are, say, a Donald Trump supporter or they are a Republican? What would your advice be to them? Or how do you get rid of Randi Weingarten in that position?
Yeah, very easy. You can vote her out in the elections each year, or even better, you can leave the government unions altogether. Go to optouttoday.com. You can click on your state. Even if you're in a blue state like New York or California, you can't be forced to pay union dues anymore. And I was just at a conference this week with hundreds of teachers who have left their government unions and joined the Teacher Freedom Alliance instead. That's how you starve the beast and incentivize people like Randi Weingarten to do a better job. Bob, she's actually being investigated by Congress right now for apparently stealing $1.4 million in union dues to use to promote her own vanity project, her book. It's just, they're just squandering teachers' paychecks on political activities and personal activity as well.
My parents were in education. My mother was a teacher. This has been the biggest anomaly to me, that the Randy Weingarten championing Democrats here when you're talking about education. Corey DeAngelis, we got to leave it there.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Can you take a guess who that is? That is Donna Fargo performing one of her many hit songs, The Happiest Girl in the Whole USA. Now, the legendary country singer is now taking the lyrics of that classic, making a certificate she hopes could be handed out to each immigrant who becomes a citizen the right way after they take the sacred oath. It is her way of rewarding those who come to this country legally, right? Pretty important stuff. The legendary Donna Fargo joins us now. Donna, it's a pleasure. Good to see you tonight. How you doing?
Great to see you, Bob. You're doing a great job. I've been watching you on Newsmax. I love Newsmax.
Well, I appreciate that.
I'm doing great.
Thank you so much. And your
Thank
music
you for having
is
me on your
beautiful. Absolutely. And so talk about this. You are almost trying to incentivize legal immigration through song here, contrary to what we hear from a lot of liberal performers here. What made you do this?
Well, I just think I wrote a song called US of A back in the 70s. And I think it was when we were going through the Watergate things. And I just thought that, you know, when citizens come here, they need to know what we expect of them as citizens and maybe something that they can live up to. So I wrote a recitation in the song that talks about that.
Well, Donna, I'll tell you what here. Some of the lyrics really inspiring that you wrote here. What's your message to those people coming to our country, real quick?
I just want them to love our country and to be good and not do crime and, you know, to get a job and just be good, you know. So let me get this straight. It's be good, don't do crime, get a job. Donna Fargo, you might be the next head of the DHS. I'll tell you what, those are words to live by. It's a pleasure. Good to see you. You have a great Friday night. Oh, great to see you, Bob. Keep at it.
All right, I will. All right, if you thought it could get any worse for the Maine Democrats after Graham Plattner, well, all you need to do is look at what's on your screen here, and you obviously know it gets even worse.
I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want to use the bathroom.
It's 2 a.m. Your fever spiked and you're miserable. Here's your options.
Urgent care, closed. ER, slammed, and you'll spend hundreds of thousands in both. Telehealth, yeah, but the pharmacies are closed.
That's the reason why we keep emergency medical kits at home.
It has doctor-prescribed medication like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other antibiotics and antivirals. You can treat flu, pneumonia, strep, sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
Because if you're sick in at night, traveling or stranded, you don't want options.
You want what is inside this kit. No waiting, no pharmacy, and no copays.
Just schedule a quick telehealth call.
And that's how you feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
Every family should have this kit, and here's how to order yours.
Order online in minutes and use the promo code to save $45. Your doctor-prescribed kit ships fast to your door, packed with medications to treat over 30 conditions. So when something hits, you're ready. And a wellness company telehealth doctor is always there if you need guidance.
As America's largest private funder of brain aneurysm research, we support AI that enables earlier detection and saves lives. 1 in 50 Americans has a brain aneurysm, and ruptures strike without warning. Our early investments supported research that helped tech companies develop AI tools, enabling physicians to find aneurysms before they rupture. AI helps doctors act sooner and accelerates life-saving progress. Now is not the time to lose our competitive edge.
As a neurologist, my patients are often concerned with age-related memory decline. I recommend Cunol Brain Health with 2 powerful, high-absorption ingredients clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Cunol, the brand I trust.
What if losing a pair of sunglasses was actually fine? That's why we built Shady Rays. Every pair of Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection, but no matter what happens, whether you drop them in the lake, a wave gets them, they're covered with lost and broken protection.
MyPillow's second annual mega sale is finally here. Get our patented premium MyPillows that adjust your exact individual needs to give you the best sleep of your life.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
I guarantee they're going to be the most comfortable pillows you'll ever own. King size only $24.98, queen size only $19.98. Giza Dream bed sheets, the best sheets in history, as low as $29.98. Lux Pier 6-piece towel sets, towels that actually dry you. What a concept. Now only $39.98. And our made in the USA mattresses and mattress toppers as low as $99.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to take advantage of our second annual mega sale. Plus free shipping options available when you order today. So don't delay, order now.
Okay, welcome back in. Time now for news from the left. If you thought that Graham Plattner was the worst Maine Democrats had to offer, well, think again, because yesterday all 8 Democrat candidates debated ahead of the next week's convention. And I'll tell you what, hard to watch, actually kind of entertaining as well because of that. The very worst was the transgender candidate Ashley Webb, a biological man posing as a woman. Let's listen to Ashley's qualifications. I can't even.
What qualifications do you have to serve in the U.S. Senate?
Oh, I ran for office several times. Didn't win, but I did run. And then I'm a songwriter, and then I write my own books. And then I suppose my transparency, I wouldn't lie to the people, and I wouldn't deceive the people like we're being deceived right now.
Okay, well, Ashley Webb, I don't even just wants to be able to use the bathroom.
The trans community, like, we're being dehumanized. They say that we want to hurt people. I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want to use the bathroom. If they want me to use the men's room, I will, but I don't want to be assaulted.
David Bozell, he's the president of the Media Research Center. He joins us now. David, wow. Wow.
Oh, we all just want to use the men's room?
He just wants to use the bathroom.
That was Meatloaf. I mean, he would do anything for love.
I
just
can't.
Like Meatloaf.
Here's what stands out to me. If we can pull any real commentary out of this, the Democrats are so crazy at this point. They allowed that to go on for a debate.
Well, Maine certainly has. I mean, at a certain level, you'd have to think that the Maine Democrats thinking, "Gosh, I'd prefer the Nazi tattoo." And the sexual predator over whatever that is. I mean, it's
now it's kind of adding up as to why
Maine's got to do better. Maine has got to have some better normal Democrats somewhere in those oyster bays, in those offshore fishermen. There's got to be a good Maine Democrat.
There has to be.
That ain't it.
Here, I want to get to this. The Maine Attorney General, Sheena Bellows, she's also in the mix to replace Graham Plattner. So everyone knows who this is. She once removed President Trump off the 2024 presidential state ballot. She was also so bad at the debate last night. She's also blaming her bad performance on ICE. Okay, she released a fundraising message. The pundit said, "I froze at the debate last night. My friends have all said I've been raw all this week." The truth is she was so shaken up because of the ICE-involved shooting here. She was blaming ICE. That was almost the best they got up there.
She's going to be able to handle Senate procedure and the voting on the Senate floor. I don't think so. Again, Maine has got to do better. Come on, guys. I mean,
we can only hope.
Can't just be the best you guys have to offer.
Or it's Ashley Webb. All right, David Bozell, sir, it's a pleasure. A little short on time. Good to see you.
Thanks,
on to this. President Trump, he heads to the World Cup final this weekend. We're going to preview what to expect for the big matchup coming up.
When you're in the news business, it never stops. News is always breaking, and it's my job to get you the news, no spin, no BS. If you don't believe us, just watch us.
Watch Finity, weeknights, only on Newsmax.
Hi, I'm Arthur Lee, inventor of LifeVac. This year, we're celebrating the 10-year anniversary of saving our first life. Since then, we've helped save over 6,000 lives, with over 4,000 of those being children. This FDA-authorized device can help prevent choking deaths with a simple place, push, and pull. It's built to last a lifetime, so please, protect your family and put a LifeVac in your home today.
Go to lifevac.net or call 877-543-3822.
Ever worry that you're drinking too much? Take back control with Or Health. Or Health provides access to medication proven to help. A daily pill to drink less, or to quit drinking altogether. Text Newsmax to 710-710 to learn more.
You're told to optimize, to hack. There's always a promise of a better you. But what if you were never meant to be fixed? Your biology knows how to thrive. It just needs a reminder. Armor Colostrum reawakens that brilliance. 400 nutrients, 4 seconds, 1 daily revival. This time, remember what you're made of.
My dad had never been in better shape. Then he had a stroke and passed away. But he had life insurance. So even after he was gone, he was still taking care of us. Ethos.com, 10 minutes, 100% online.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
While this banana may not save you from someone breaking into your home, Berna's banana helped one vet repel an intruder in his.
This huge guy, 6'5", 6'6", just barreled through my front door. I have my Berna and my Glock. I always go for the Berna first. I've seen enough death and destruction to last 2 lifetimes. Here is the perfect item I can have, feel totally safe, and know I'm not going to kill anybody.
At Berna, we don't sell bananas, we sell peace of mind.
When we started Allegiance, we were shocked to learn how many American flags are actually made overseas.
If there's one thing that deserves to be made here in America, it should start with the American flag.
At Allegiance, we do it differently. Flags 100% made in America, by Americans, with American materials.
Join our pledge to make the American flag truly American.
Visit showallegiance.com to get your high-quality American flag today. That's showallegiance.com.
Most people call a leaf filter when their gutters are clogged and they notice one of the many issues that can bring. Well, sometimes it's the smell of mildew when water has seeped into the interior walls, or maybe they've spotted mold in the attic. But most often, it's the more obvious signs of damage, like rotten soffit, fascia, or water pooling near their foundation. You can get ahead of costly damage by protecting your home's gutters today. We're in your neighborhood and ready to help.
Schedule your free gutter inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
Okay, finally tonight, President Trump is set to attend the World Cup final between Spain and Argentina at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey on Sunday. Here he was speaking with FIFA's presidents from a World Cup event at Trump Tower earlier today.
By all means, this World Cup has exceeded all expectations.
This has really brought the world together. The 2026 FIFA World Cup has broken almost every record imaginable. This is the largest World Cup in history by far. With more than 6.5 million attendees, this has been by far the most attended tournament in history. It's been a true honor for Americans to share our magnificent country with the world.
Edie, who's your favorite soccer player? Huh?
It's 41 days until the first college football game.
Oh! Okay, I had a feeling you might say something like that. I was kind of setting you up.
Touchdown, that's all I know.
All right, I like that. I'm done.
Okay.
You have a great show.
Yours was a great one too. I'm gonna try to keep it on that par.
All right.
All right, Finnerty starts right now.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.